Audio check.
Hey, yep, we got it. We're ready whenever.
All right, excellent. So again, thank you all for joining us. And we're going to be walking through Foreflight Dispatch on the web, discussing how the product works and how it integrates with Foreflight Mobile Electronic Flight Bag. So that's what the class will instill of today. When you are dealing with ForeFlight, we offer two products to the market. We have ForeFlight Electronic Flight Bag, the product that should be near and dear to all of your hearts as it is to mine. We revolutionize the way that pilots fly around the world by bringing your charts digitally into the palm of your hand. And ForeFlight has been a fantastic tool for the past 15 years it's been out. But ForeFlight was designed as an individual pilot's flight planning tool. You take your iPad in your hand, you put in your route of flight, you do a weather briefing, file your flight plan electronically, follow along in flight. And then we had post-flight debriefing tools like our logbook and our track log reviewer. And all of these products gave a start to finish process of flight planning for pilots around the world. However, it was designed as an individual pilot's tool. We do have a lot of sharing capability, but when you share a flight plan with another pilot, you own that flight plan. So we prevent other people from editing your flight plan. So if they needed to make an edit, they could create a copy. And then if they shared the changes that they made back with you, now you both have duplicate flight plans with varying information in them. So in order to solve that issue, that's where Foreflight Dispatch came in. Foreflight Electronic Flight Bag and Foreflight Dispatch are separate programs, but they work together in partnership to provide a collaborative flight planning approach with Foreflight Dispatch that passes a group shared flight plan to each individual pilot or crew member inside of Foreflight Electronic Flight Bag. So that's where the partnership between the two programs works, even though they are separate programs. For the purpose of the training today, I'll refer to Foreflight as the mobile platform on your iPhone and your iPad, and Dispatch as the web collaborative planning tool that we'll be outlining today. And again, as questions come up, please feel free to ask those in real time so that we can help you and everyone else in the class. Now, this interface on the screen today may look familiar to some of you. If you've ever been to plan.foreflight.com, which is our web user interface, you will recognize that the tabs on the left side of the screen look very familiar. The only thing that's different is when you have Dispatch, Dispatch will be the first tab and it will show at the top of the list. All of the tabs below that are actually Foreflight specific to the user that's logged in. You can see my name down here under the account tab. So everything below Dispatch is Foreflight, where Dispatch looks the same for all of the team members at the same time. Now I'm going to tap on these two little arrows, and that just gives us a full screen planning view. And what we're seeing here today is the centralized flights list. This is a list of every single flight on your account using your published aircraft. Those are the aircraft profiles that are maintained by the administrators of your account and shared with all users on the account so that they can all have access to the same data. Anytime you create a flight plan with one of those published aircraft, it will show up here. Now, that's the same if you build the flight in Foreflight on the iPad, that flight will show up here if you're using a group aircraft. If you plan one using Foreflight Dispatch, it will show up here. And if you utilize Jeppesen Mission Planning to build your flight package for you, their flights will show up here as well. So you can think that this entire list can get very busy because you have dozens of pilots and dozens of aircraft, which could equate out to hundreds of flights to be displayed on this page. So we can filter this information down using the filtering criteria at the top of the screen. We can filter by filing status. We can filter by time frame. We can filter by who created the flight plan. We have a one-time wildcard search over here on the right, and the watch list is a saved filter. So you can filter this by keyword. Perhaps it's your name. You only want to see flights that are in your name, or a specific call sign. Or we have this tags feature that is often used by many group planning scenarios, where if you're planning multiple legs, or if Jeppesen Mission Planning is building a flight for you, they'll put your mission number and your unit information next to that, and it allows flights to be grouped together under the watch list or the search. But all of these tabs are searchable, so you can search with the tabs. You can organize them with the little search arrows here. And this main column created by is where you can see the type of flight. We can see if it says dispatch, that means that somebody used dispatch and tapped on new flight, and they created the flight here in dispatch. If you see pilot, that means that that pilot created that flight in ForeFlight Mobile or under the My Flights tab way over here on the left, because that's the same flights tab that you see on your iPhone and your iPad. They just sync together like that to make them the same across all their devices. The last one that you'll notice, and I have to scroll down a little bit to find that, is going to be FSP. That stands for Flight Service Provider. That's where you're going to see Jeppesen Mission Planning come in. Now, if you're used to the process of how Jeppesen Mission Planning works, you go to their dispatch login page, and from there you request a flight package be created. That process does not change with how you utilize ForeFlight Dispatch. If you're going to use Jeppesen Mission Planning, you still go to their website, fill out the form, and they will build your flight completely with all of your files and diplomatic clearances and everything you need. The only thing that changes is they're going to use the ForeFlight Dispatch product for your routing, performance, and to share the files with all of the flight crew members. That's the only thing that changes. So please continue to use that process. And that should have been outlined in the slides that Kenny Vaughn should have sent out to all of the units. Now, if a pilot does create a flight on their iPad, like Luke did down here, you can start on the iPad, then you can come over here and click the edit button, and now you can use the advanced flight planning features that are exclusive to ForeFlight Dispatch, like assigning a flight crew, utilizing ETP flight planning. See, he's already done all of this. Even though he started on his iPad, he came in, put in all of these ETPs, got all of his routing information together, and he released this flight plan to the rest of his crew, even though it started in ForeFlight itself. I'll scroll back down here and I'll show you one of those ways that you can tell that is that this released by, even though it shows that there was a pilot involved, when you see released, you know that it was edited and continued to be manipulated by dispatch. So that's a really good key, as opposed to these flights up here where they say no, not available under PIC and they weren't released. These are just simply iPad flights that these users created. But anytime you see released, whether it says pilot or dispatch or Jeppesen Mission Planning, it means that dispatch has had a hand in the flight planning preparation. Now, even though you can access all of these flights by clicking the edit button, there's a quick access button called the More button. When you tap on the More button, it allows you a shortcut to see the nav log, the briefing, the ICAO document, overflight report. You can edit those flight tags, and we've got this select button, which is a multiple select tool. And what it does is it allows you to group multiple flights together. So for instance, all of these VR61 flights, if they were multiple legs of the same mission, we could click on all of them and generate one overlaying weather briefing instead of in each individual leg weather briefing. It's a very good tool. That multiple selection tool will allow you to do that. And you can also file from that button. So if a flight plan has not been filed, you can click file, and then it will file that flight plan. One of the things you'll notice under the filing status, once they're filed, you should be able to see acknowledgement messages, rejection messages, amendment messages. They should all show up here to continue that communication from air traffic control with you. If they've not been filed, they will not get a status update. Now we're ready to create a flight plan together. So to create a flight plan in Foreflight Dispatch, you just click on the New Flight button, and you begin with our flight planning form. Now, our flight planning form data is very, very simple to use. You just answer each field as much and as complete as possible in order to generate your flight plan. Now, just like all Foreflight products, Foreflight is tab navigation based. That's why we have all these tabs on the left-hand side for our features. Well, a dispatch flight's the same way, except they're at the top of the screen. We have our flight plan form. The C-40 is not supported for runway analysis yet, so that one's going to be grayed out. But then ATC data and files are tabs that you will be utilizing. The first step is to select an aircraft. All of the tails that are available to you should be listed here. The next step is to do a departure and a destination. Now, I'm going to ask somebody to unmute themselves and give me a departure and a destination airport for us to plan with today. I want to make sure it's airports that you actually fly to as opposed to just two random commercial airports.
Hey, Joey, Mike Morello here, Jack. Can we do KNU? And then
do it phonetically for me. Kilo.
November Tango Uniform.
Okay. Oceana.
Destination will be Kilo November India Papa.
I didn't get the one before Papa.
India Papa.
India Papa. All right. So we're going to go from Oceana to Jacksonville, correct?
Yep.
All right. Excellent. So we did that. Now, as we were typing in, we could have just wrote Oceana and it would have found it as well. This is a search bar as well as an ICAO identifier strip. You'll notice that it's showing current wind, direction, longest runway, and authoritative, whatever the center's name is. Now, you'll look at Jacksonville, and it's a TAF instead of a METAR, saying what is the expected weather conditions on your time of arrival. So that's where those two would separate from each other right now. Now, when you tap on the information button, you have quick access to current weather, forecasted weather, and NOTAMs. And you have this go to airport page, which will open a brand new full screen tab with all of the information you need to know about those airports, including remarks, procedures, weather information, runway information, all of it on a full screen. See, one of the good things about using Foreflight Dispatch is that you're probably going to be better using it sitting at a computer terminal, maybe at an ops desk, but you'll have a keyboard and a mouse, maybe multiple monitors, and it just makes it much easier to build multiple flight plans. So that's what we're doing today. That's where that airport page would pop up its own tab. Now, when we're ready to plan for time, I'm going to put this flight out to tomorrow. But we can plan for time of departure or time of arrival. And if you set it for time of arrival, it will then set your flight plan up for what time you need to depart to make that rendezvous. And we can also do in local or Zulu time. I'm going to push this out to 1930 Zulu for tomorrow. And then for call sign, we're just going to put in FF001. Actually, let's use my call sign. FF077 is my call sign. So we'll place that there, and any call sign that you're using will just override that field in the flight planning form under the ATC data tab. Now, we can plan for 2 destination alternates and a takeoff alternate. Now, the big thing is if you tap on the alternate, it's going to look at your destination and show you different airfields and the length of their runway and the distance from where you're landing for you to be able to choose an alternate for your airport. Now, here in the US and in Canada, we can only file direct to alternates. The FAA swim system and Nav Canada's system does not accept alternate routing when you send it to their computers. It just ignores that part. But with Eurocontrol, it's very important to have alternate routing. So you can either file direct, you can select automatic and let our advanced flight planning engine give you a route and altitude, or you can manually build your own alternate route and altitude as needed. Since we're filing domestically, I'm going to leave this on direct, but you can also plan the performance according to a different cruise profile. So if you needed to go to a more conservative fuel profile just for the alternate portion, you can select that. Speaking of all of those performance profiles, we currently don't have an exact C40 profile. No one's ever supplied us with one of the NATOPs for the C40, and everybody that plans with this says the BBJ profile is almost exact. So we haven't had any complaints. Nobody's pushed hard enough to give us the NATOPs to build our own profile. But if you wanted a C40 NATOPs profile, we have all of the authority and we have the processes to accept that and build that profile if you'd like to. But for now, FLSW has decided that the BBJ is perfectly acceptable for your flight planning today. Now, those performance profiles that we built off of the BBJ information are found under the fuel section. We have 5 climb profiles, many en route profiles, and 6 descent profiles for the BBJ or the C40. Now, this is a lot of profiles to have to list and look through. Now, the FLSW team has set Cost Index 30 as the default profile for you all. But if you would like to look at varying performance and time en route information, we have a tool known as the Cruise Advisor. That Cruise Advisor allows you to compare 3 different performance profiles at varying altitudes to select which one you'd like to utilize. It's going to start with your default, and then it's going to show you can select up to 3 of any other profile. Now, it shows us, the service ceiling on this one was 41, so we're going to try to get you as high to be as economical as possible. So using Cost Index 30, you can get there in 1 hour and 22 minutes and burn 6,600 pounds of fuel with a 47-knot headwind. If you use max range, you could save about almost 100 pounds of fuel and only add 4 minutes to your flight plan. But you can see all these varying altitudes. You could go up to a much faster profile like 80. And in this case, you could get there, 3 minutes faster, but burn another 1,500 or another 1,000 pounds of fuel. So you do have just a lot of different options available here to select an altitude or performance profile to plan with. Taxi fuel is set by the aircraft's default fuel information, but you can override that if you have like a maintenance run up or bad weather, maybe a lot of people waiting to depart. You could always add extra taxi fuel if needed. And then we plan the fuel quantities according to 5 different criteria. The fuel planning numbers are way over here on the right side of the screen under the performance section. So you can do minimum fuel, which is your destination fuel, alternate, and reserve fuel added together. Maximum fuel is how much you can fit while looking at your useful load. So whatever remaining useful load you have, just fill it up with as much fuel as possible. Or you can do the extra fuel section, the landing fuel section, or your takeoff fuel section manually. So it's either manual takeoff fuel, extra fuel, or what you have when your wheels touch. And you can manually select that information as well. I'm going to use minimum fuel today. Now, for the reserve policies, we are working to create a better reserve advisor for you that will better match your different operations, whether they're in the country, whether they're island related, all of that. We do know and we are working towards that. Right now, the slides that Kenny sent you will walk through the policies that FLSW wants you to use when doing your reserve calculations currently. So please just look to those slides and review how to do your reserve policies. Now, for wind planning, ForeFlight can give you forecasted wind and temperature out about 7 days into the future. If I come up here and I switch, let's just say this and put it out a month, we can see that forecasted winds are no longer available, and it's going to default to the historical wind and temperature calculations. So it's going to automatically do that when you're outside of the forecast window. Once you get back into the forecast window, it would then update itself with forecasted information. However, you do have the ability to manually select historical winds or use your own fixed wind and temperature component. So if you'd like to do a zero wind calculation, you can. Or if you'd like to do historical winds, you can select those. Now, under probability, 50% is going to be the most accurate. If any of you know about statistics and understand what a bell curve is, the biggest average is going to be in the middle at the top of the bell curve at the 50% mark. So that's why this is the most accurate of historical winds. The bigger the data set, the more outliers there are. So really high wind days and really low wind days are averaged in, or you just get the group that's in the middle that's the most accurate, the larger sample set. So that's what you're seeing here under historical. But because we're just going out tomorrow, we're going to keep this under forecasted. Now we're at the crew association portion. And again, I would like to remind you, if a question comes up, please feel free to ask or type it into the chat window. Now, collaboration is key with ForeFlight Dispatch. How do we collaborate with our team? We have to assign crew members. For the PIC section, I'm going to add myself here, and then I'm just going to bring in DP, and he can be my co-pilot. I can add more pilots or crew member assignments as I need to. This does not stand for cabin attendant. This is for crew member assignment. As many people as you place here are going to be placed in that section in the payload calculator. Now, as you add these crew members, when you select them from the drop-down menu, you will be able to see their name and their email addresses here. I'm going to address personal pilot information here shortly, how ForeFlight not only does not have the capability to share your information with ATC, but we wouldn't even if we could. So please don't ever be worried about having your name or email address here, because we physically cannot share that with anybody that you don't tell us to. And I will cover that exclusively here in a few minutes. But for now, I've got our 2 pilots. We're going to carry 25 passengers. We're going to bring 3,500 pounds of cargo and gear. And that gives us our payload of 9,500 pounds. That moves over here out of our empty weight. And we've got our zero fuel weight, total fuel needed, gives us our calculations for our useful load over here on the right-hand side. So now we have that information ready to go. Now, whoever is listed in these crew members are who is going to, once we release the flight plans will show up in their ForeFlight application on their iPhones and iPads. So it's important that you select the people from the list. Now, the particular flight that you showed us today is not really one that we need contingency planning on. Kenny's slides will go into detail about how to utilize the contingency planning in ForeFlight, but it's as simple as selecting your ETP airport pairs. Let's say we were going to or we're going over to Europe. We're going to cross the North Atlantic. So you could put in Gander and Shannon. You could put in Goose Bay and Keflavik. You could put in Greenland and Lodges. Just any 2 airport pairs at a time. And you can have multiple pairs, and we'll build you multiple ETP scenarios and place those in the weather briefing for you. You can also utilize a diversion airport or a point of safe return, which just gives you ETPs either to the diversion airport from your takeoff or back to your point of return all the way back to the airport you left from. Now, when we're talking about the routing portion down here at the bottom, Foreflight Dispatch requires an active internet connection to speak to our advanced flight planning engine. That engine uses machine learning and a direct connection into the Afton network, so we can see every single flight plan filed around the world. We can see where every aircraft is currently flying, if they're being rerouted for weather, is there icing, is there turbulence, what is your aircraft's performance according to its takeoff weight. We can see all of that. And that's how we come up with our recommended route. The recommended route might not be the fastest route. It might not be the shortest route. But what it is your best chance to be cleared as filed. And that's super important for pilots, because if a flight planning program can give you a route, but air traffic control is going to change it every time you file, well, what's the point in the reliability? Just file direct and then let them tell you which route they want to give you. So, but for flight, if you use the recommended route, domestically in the US, you have a 97% chance to fly cleared as filed. And in Eurocontrol, you have a 93% chance to get cleared as filed if you utilize our recommended route. So I always suggest, if you can, use that route. If there are previously cleared routes, or if there are if you have saved routes, you can build your own route and save it. Those will show up down here. Or if there's preferred routing between two airports, it will also show up down here as well. So you will have all of those routes to select from that the computer made for you. Now, for the military, that doesn't always work. A lot of customization comes in depending on the mission that you fly. So we do have a lot of really great tools in our route builder tool. When we tap on the route builder, the first thing that we can add are constraints. These are parameters to tell our advanced planning engine, I want you to go from here to here, but I want you to do it according to this. So via an avoid waypoint, avoid FIR. So if you don't have a diplomatic clearance, just don't fly through that region. You can use the organized track system. You can via and avoid SIDS and stars. If you have a diplomatic clearance and you've been given a specific route through an airspace, you can put the partial route in and give the entry point and exit point and the route along the way. And our advanced flight planning engine will take you to the entry point and from the exit point to your destination. We also have avoid country. So you can fly into a FIR region and not cross a political border. So that helps flying around island nations or coastal regions where you can fly through the FIR and just not cross their political border. And we do put a buffer around island nations and coastal regions for international waters. As you add, and you can add as many constraints as you would like, and you can also do altitude constraints down here. Once you have the constraints listed, click the Generate New Route button, and it will build you a new route. Now, once the route is created, you can then do by leg constraints as well. So you can see the route down here, and you can pick one of the legs and tap the plus emblem, and you can control your altitude. You're not going to do any aerial refueling, but you could do AR tracks in military training routes if you needed. You can adjust your cruise profile change. We support on-load, offload fuel, on-load, offload payload. We support added delay or stay, and we will file it correctly depending on the region that you're filing from. You can add a waypoint along that route. You can create your own hold or orbit. You can add a point time of arrival. So if you need to arrive at a waypoint at a specific time, you can set your time of arrival at the waypoint, and then we'll tell you what time to depart in order to make that rendezvous. And then lastly, we have change flight rules. So if you're doing composite flying from IFR to VFR, Or in Europe, if you're transiting operational air traffic to general air traffic, you can change those flight rules accordingly at the waypoint as well. Then once you have all of the constraints and routing information done, you then have some tools for vetting that information. We have the Jeppesen Airway Manual Route Report. Now, our engine created this, so it already knows what the Jeppesen Airway Manual limitations are going to tell us. So we really shouldn't see anything here right now. But as you build your own route, there may be some directionality along a airway, an altitude restriction. Maybe there's a specific piece of equipment that's required for that airspace. Well, we would tell you what that is, and you can select to avoid that area, and then we could build you a way around it as well. So that's the route report tool. We have a live NOTAM search tool. You can search airports, airspaces, individual NOTAMs, if they've all got unique numbers to them. You can also look at the FIR NOTAMs as well, and you can put as many identifications in here by space or comma, and they will show all the NOTAMs listed here. We are working to build this more into a report tool so that you could print from here, but right now this is just a live search tool. One of my favorite is the airspace crossing tool. The airspace crossing tool will tell you which time and which points you're going between FIRs or crossing country borders, and it'll show you the nearest waypoint and time to that, and that will help you if you have to get your own diplomatic clearances. You could export this report out to CSV format, and then you could utilize that to help you with your dips. Now, yeah, go ahead.
The question, or the reason why I asked for these two airports is we were having trouble getting it to give us the normal star that we were on the way back in here. Do you mind just going back to the back to the via star, and just we hadn't seen that before. So constraints via star, and then can you fix this? Oh, okay, nice. You can fix HOTAR via base. Normal. So the HOTAR one, then are you able to fix the point there, or just go ahead and fix?
So right now, it's just going to give you that. But the next tool I was going to talk about is our Procedure Advisor tool, where you can look at a graphical depiction of all of those. So when we click on HOTAR, you can click your transition point if you'd like to.
Hey, Joey, question on the recommended route for the last file. So you said 95 and 90% for recommended. What is that for the last cleared thing? Cleared route? Is it higher? Or?
Now, say that one more time down here about the recommended route.
You said 95% of the time, if you do recommended route, that's what
right.
If you should we put weight on the AT cleared routes, since those are the ones that were just cleared, like are those actually
no, that's only for the recommended route. Now, previously cleared routes should give you cleared as filed, yes. But all we're doing is we're looking between these, and think about it. Who are the only people that are going to be flying between Oceana and Jacksonville Naval? You know, it's really you guys. So these flight plans were, oh, well, no, one was in a piston. Somebody flew a piston airplane that route before, twice in the last year. So, and someone did it in a turboprop too. So who knows? But that's where these were done from. The recommended routes are the ones that we say are real. That's our flight planning engine saying we think this is going to be the option that they'll let you fly. But that doesn't mean that it's the only way. You know, the FAA is a lot more lenient than it is over in Eurocontrol. And that's why, and you know, with bad weather and somebody crashing on an airport that causes a closure, or a TFR that pops up all of a sudden, you know, those are the things that get us outside of that 97% chance, you know.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for the questions. Those were very timely. It was, and you can get to the Procedure Advisor from here as well. So you don't have to go all the way into the route builder to see that sit-in star tool. You do have direct access to it from the main page here. But now that we've built a route, now remember, look, our recommended route says flight level 400, but you don't have to fly 400 if you don't want to. You could change this down to 380 or 360. You can change it right here. We're just trying to get you, if the performance of your aircraft will let you get that high, we want to optimize fuel and time. So we're going to try to put you as high as possible, but you still have control over your altitudes. Oh, I did miss one more thing under the Route Builder tool. You have a profile view here on the Route Builder as well, which will show you your step climbs and descents. And it will also bring in turbulence and icing if you're going to, terrain, and temperature and wind barbs as well. And very soon, you'll be able to control your altitudes here by grabbing a waypoint and dragging it to an altitude also. So I really look forward when they update this tool for the rubber banding. But for right now, this will show you your climb, en route, and descent portions and 3D icing and turbulence here as well. That was in the Route Builder tool down here. Now that we have our route, I want to click the Save button. That's going to give us our action buttons down here, but we still have some more information to go through. I just want to make sure that every time I leave a page, I click the Save button. So I click on the ATC Data tab, and Kenny has already built some automations in. So it's automatically going to select M. It's automatically going to put 1801. It's automatically going to put a state STS code. It's automatically going to put some remarks in. But you can edit anything in blue. So don't worry about that. You can always edit that information. This is your Field 18 remarks section. If you have notes from your diplomatic clearance, anything that you read in the GP that you have to do, you can write any textual information to ATC under your remarks section here. This is your Field 19 information. It's all coming from the aircraft information. Now, one place that I want you to note is PIC phone number. This is not shared with air traffic control. If you are filing flight plans with ForeFlight and you keep getting a rejection or you keep getting an error message, it notifies our dispatchers who are live 24 hours a day monitoring all the flight plans. How can they find you if you don't put your information here? That's why I always urge you to use your email address and your phone number right here in this field, and it's only for our dispatchers to locate you to help you in the event you need it. If you look at the bottom under the FPL message, this is the only information that we can send automatically to air traffic control. This is called an FPL syntax message. There is not a field that's accepted for emails, phone numbers, or pilots' names. Not even souls on board is listed in the FPL message. This is the only information they care about is the type of aircraft, filing codes, time, route, and estimated time of arrival. That's all they care about. So that's the only information that's automatically placed into the filing process. This is only sent to the Afton addresses listed here. This is the center and the towers that we're going to be flying through. If you have an entity that accepts FPL messages and you know their 8-digit alpha code, you can manually enter that here as well. You also have the ability to share notes with the flight crew that will go to the nav log, and you can add emailed notifications to flight watchers who are people that are not assigned as a crew member, but you'd like to give them information about the flight, like a maintenance supervisor or an ops person that you just want to share just a general notification about the flight. You can do that with a flight watcher. Once we've completed this page, we click the Save button. Now we move over to the Files page. You can drag and drop any file that you would like to here in Microsoft Office format or in PDF file, and it will be shared directly into the ForeFlight application for the flight crew. Jeppesen Mission Planning will provide your flight package here as well. They'll send it to you via email to the crew members, and they will also drop all of those files here so that you can access them in the ForeFlight program.
Joey,
Lastly,
just real-
there's this. Yeah, go ahead.
back to the file tab. This is something that guys have been using, but I think it's important for everybody, especially those not here. You just throw in like the flight card and the flight advisory and the CPR numbers that we get from the ops team on the spreadsheet into that file. When you release the flight, it's now attached to the file, so everybody will have it. So when you're using it from a computer, this is what I always do. It's the easiest way to keep that information across everybody. And that way, if we get an updated one, you can just grab it, drop it in there, and now once and it should be released to everybody's iPad. So I think the file tab is underutilized, and hopefully moving forward, guys can actually use it to its full ability, and everybody can have all the information. Thanks.
Excellent point. Thank you there. And I see that Patrick wrote a question into the chat asking about the MEL that affects block 10. Do you have the ability to edit for that block instantly, like if your UHF radio went in-op? So we're working on that right now. Very soon you will be able to edit your filing codes by actually coming in here and just deleting that code if you needed to, or select from the equipment to override just for this flight. Currently, you do not have the ability to override that. So in this particular case, even though you're filing the code, you could place in the remarks section that currently UHF radio, which is just a uniform filing code, is invalid. So just say U code in op in remarks, and they'll pick that up manually. So thanks for the question, Patrick. And then files. And then lastly, EAPIS is something you will not utilize. This is for general declarations with customs. You're exempt from that, so you won't use it, but it still shows up. I wish they would just turn it off, but they can't. So they just tell me tough. So we've finished filling out all of our tabs at the top of the screen. I'm going to click save one more time down here. You can't click save enough times. You never know. But if you tried to leave a page that would override a save, it will say, are you sure you don't want to save before leaving? So you shouldn't have to worry about that. But now we're ready to release the flight to the flight crew. So we're going to click the release button. And we have two options, editable and read only. Editable means that on the iPad, the flight crew and the flight crew members can change any aspect of the flights, like time of departure, tail number, route information, and anything they change will go back to dispatch, change the main flight plan, and then be reshared with everybody on the flight crew. If you release it as read only, they will not be able to edit the information on the iPad. They will have to come back to dispatch in order to make those edits, which you could from your iPad just open Safari or Google Chrome, go to the dispatch website and edit it using the dispatch program, but just not inside the mobile app. For those of you using Jeppesen Mission Planning, it's very important to note, every flight plan they release will be read only. If you need to make any change to one of their flight plans, please reach out to Jeppesen Mission Planning and keep them in the loop and let them do it, because that means there's more people than just the flight crew that are responsible for that information from the flight. So they need to make sure they update everybody across the board, not just the individual crew members. So again, they will always release that as read only. Going to release the flight plan, and there it goes. The release status is starting to update. Now I'll show you how to file in just a second, but the next thing to note here is the history bar. The history is going to show you every person that logged in and changed something about this flight and where they did it. So for instance, I created the flight and added all of these details to this flight. Then I just released it to the flight crew. If I come up here and I push this flight back one more day, and I click the save button, because it's only going to update everybody on the flight crew with saved information. When I look at the history the next time, we can see the flight plan was modified by me, and I changed the time And look, the reserve fuel's changed because the weather's going to be different the next day. So you can see we actually got a little bit more of a tailwind the next day. So you can see that all of those were changed by me at that time automatically. Now, as you generate a navlog or a briefing, the same navlog and briefing is shared with everybody that was listed as a crew member in real time. Starting 24 hours from time of departure, it's going to start automatically updating itself with the weather information. So one thing is Kenny built you a custom navlog and it's already selected as default. You can open just the navlog, but I start with the briefing because it gives me the navlog and the weather information. But starting at 24 hours out of time of departure and every hour after, it's going to automatically redo the briefing and the navlog for the current wind and temperature and fuel burn estimates, all the way until 1 hour from time of departure, when it will do a final update of the flight plan. If you want to manually update the information at any time, you just click the refresh briefing button. Now, from the briefing, it starts with your navlog, then it goes to your weather information, then it goes to your METARs and SIGMETs, your global rain predictions, NOTAMs, etc. All of that information is already here. You can download it, you can print it, but it's in PDF format. So you should have a PDF available of all of that flight information. And that same navlog and briefing is pushed to Foreflight itself and available on the iPad. Now, without opening the entire briefing package, you can go straight to the DD1801, straight to the ICAO document, straight to the overflight report, NOTAMs, weather, or route report directly from the More button. So we've got all of this information gathered together. We're ready to file the flight plan. When you go to file the flight plan, we generate the DD1801, and we can see that because I was PIC, my name is put in the PIC, and my signature is the one that I place here, because you're supposed to sign a DD1801, so that's how you sign it. Now, if you put in a base ops email here, we'll send this DD1801 to where you tell us to go and file with ATC. If we only notify base ops, we're just going to email this to this email address with a signature. That's all we're going to do. But this is at your direction. So you're telling us where to send this. So if your personal information's on here, this is where we're going to send it. You can put your own email address here if you don't want to do the 17-digit base ops email and then just forward it from your email to them. Or you can just email yourself a copy, but it's going to go to where you direct with your information on there. Now, if you don't want your name on there anyway, in the PIC field, come over here and select Mill Pilot. There is a Mill Pilot section, and when you change that to Mill Pilot and you go to the filing section, you can just say on file for your signature. And at the bottom, it's going to say Mill Pilot on file. And there's your information. You're not sharing any of your personal information with them. But again, we don't have the ability to send an ICAO PDF or a DD1801 autonomously. We can only send them to email addresses you tell us to send them to. So that's why I really say you really don't have to worry about your personal information on here. But that's totally up to you and how you'd like to run your deals. So we're going to click save one last time. And now we're ready to go fly this flight plan. It's on my iPad. I can look up the information. Everything's ready to go. But now I'm down in Jacksonville and it's time for me to go to the next place I'm going to fly to. So I'm going to click next flight up here at the top of the screen. It remembers the tail number I was flying. It remembers my last destination. It remembers my crew members, and it remembers how many people I was carrying on the airplane. And now you can come in. It's not going to remember the files that you have because this is a brand new flight. But now you can come through, start building your next flight plan with a lot of the information already filled in, and you're ready to generate that next leg of your flight plan. And then that flight plan will show up here on the centralized flights list. Let it refresh itself, and here's the flight plan that we built together right here for September 27th at 1930 Zulu. And that's our walkthrough of the Foreflight Dispatch product. And I'm now going to open the floor for questions. Your silence says that I did a really good job, but I know somebody's got a question.
Hey, Joey, this is Dave Lovett. I have a few questions I'll ask you.
Hey, Dave. Thanks, buddy.
Hey, so when we looked at the fuel profiles, the fuel burns earlier, is there anywhere that we can add a fuel bias? Let's say we recognize that, the BBJ profiles aren't exactly what we have. Engines are getting older, and we want to take an extra 5%. Is there a place to put that bias in, or is it only by manually adjusting the reserves?
No, excellent question, Dave. Yes, all of these tails can be biased by tail. So this has to be done by an administrator. You can make a copy of one of those aircraft and bias it yourself for your own personal use, but we don't want one pilot changing a profile for everybody that has access to it. So only administrators under the aircraft tab have the ability, and this kind of got a little small when I changed. I'll blow it back up. But administrators can go here, select that tail number, go down to the cruise profile, click adjust, and now you can add a speed and fuel flow bias that is specific to that profile on that specific tail.
Gotcha. Okay, so all run by the administrator.
Yep.
So I got a comment for you. So I talked to DP about this at the last conference, and basically he would be the one who would make that fuel bias adjustment. He said just export him the flight. So if you're flying in Foreflight, you can fill out whatever your fuel tables are. Find a flight that you can fly close to profile, fill it out, just send it to TP, and they'll update the aircraft.
Yep, that's excellent.
So another question I had, the old computerized flight plans that we had. So let's say that you want to file at 380. In the flight plan information, it would have an additional altitude section that would say, hey, I know you filed at 38, but this is what the fuel on time is looking at 400 or 360 in case, you need to climb due to turbulence down low, looking for a smoother ride, or, there's a layer you're trying to get below, something like that. Is there any other information like that that's available to you in flight in the dispatch package?
Yes. So we did it a little earlier with the cruise advisor. The cruise advisor actually should be used after the entire route is placed there, then come back up to the cruise advisor. And now you'll see varying altitudes and varying performance profiles. And if there was significant icing or turbulence, there would be a little notification here saying this altitude includes moderate turbulence. This one doesn't.
Okay, but that information is only available when you have an internet connection, right? Not,
Yes.
when you're 5 hours after filing or something like that on your third leg.
Nope. When you're up in the air in the airplane profile, you're going to have to rely on the nav log, and the nav log will have winds aloft information at various altitudes for you. You will have a report here, so you would have to report on the last time that it was updated for you.
Okay, and I think my question was actually answered by the box that's just above that with the various altitudes and such. I think that's analogous information.
Yep.
Sweet. Then the last question I had was for your avoiding FIRs. I assume you can kind of guess the syntax. So if you're gonna go from San Diego to Jacksonville and you want to make sure you don't fly through Mexican airspace, can you just type Mexico, or
Absolutely.
do you have to know? Okay.
So you can come over here and you can say avoid FIR, and one thing it'll say is you can avoid the overflown FIR by itself. These are the ones you're going to fly through. So you already see you're not going to fly through their airspace anyway, but you can just come here and say Mexico and just click the Mexican FIRs and it'll keep you out of there.
All right, cool. That's all I got. Thank you.
Yep. Is that for like when you're flying into North Island down there and trying to not fly into Mexico down here?
Exactly. Sometimes
Yeah.
departing, you get some weird routing if you're not
Yep.
paying
Yeah.
attention.
For right there, you can also go in and tell it avoid controlled airspace. So you could come down here and say avoid controlled airspace and say, God, I forget which, I think it's it's probably the terminal area, and then say Mexico. Yeah, right here. And then you can just say avoid Mexicali and it'll keep you out of that whole controlled airspace.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, Joey, I might have missed it, but where does it show you once you file a flight plan, whether or not it was accepted or rejected, sort of like that, old school
That's
meal
good.
plan or dispatch status?
Yep, that's going to come on the ATC data page. It's going to be under the filing messages portal right here. Let's go look at a flight plan that has this done to it already. So we're going to see that here's a flight. Well, let's go to one that's already been done. So this one, no, still the 25th. Here's one from 2 days ago. When we view this flight plan, ATC data, we can come down here and here's the acknowledgement message. Here's a change that happened for another acknowledgement message. Here's the original this is the original FPL. This is the amendment. Here's the acknowledges for both of those. So this is where your notifications will come to the ATC data tab. And when you're looking at that flight plan and you have those messages here, you can click on the more button and go directly to ATC messages, and it will load those for you directly under the more button.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Great question. So while we're thinking of the next question that you'd like to ask me, to contact my team, we're at the email address that I'm putting into the chat right now. It's MFBSuccess@foreflight.com. So send us any feature request, any bugs that you see, anything you'd like to learn more about ForeFlight, to schedule more training events like this. Anything I do remotely is free of charge. You just got to book it with me. But you can send any correspondence military specific to MFBsuccess@foreflight.com. We also have a 24-hour phone number for dispatch only support. So this is for if you're having trouble creating a flight plan in dispatch, these phone numbers will get you to a live dispatcher to help you. So if you're having trouble getting Eurocontrol valid routes, you're getting error messages, things like that, that's what you reach out to those phone numbers and they'll help you. If you're using Jeppesen Mission Planning, call them first. They're trained every bit as well as our dispatchers are. They can help you. They know how to use ForeFlight and how to fix the little bugs and quirks and things like that. So go to Jeppesen Mission Planning first. If it's a flight plan that you did on your own, call one of those two numbers listed in the chat message. That's 877-219-1536. 877-219-1536. That's the dispatch 24-hour a day dispatch number. When they answer the phone, it's a calling service. Say, I have an urgent matter for a dispatcher. They'll give you a live person. If you say it's not urgent, they're going to just give you a voicemail. So say, I have an urgent report for a dispatcher, and they'll give you a live person, and they'll be right there to help you with anything that they can. So any other questions that I can help with today? Don't be bashful. I do this every day. This is my third FLSW training just today, and I have one more this afternoon. So please feel free to ask those questions, or feel free to email me at mfbsuccess@foreflight.com as well, and I can answer them through the email system. Justin, it sounds like we're good.
I think we're getting the flyers going. Really appreciate the time. We'll make sure to reach out if we have any other questions.
Why don't you go ahead and hit the stop button on the record so we make sure that stops correctly?